So the last section of this book is about the social impact of the Industrial Revolution. One theme we want to return to is that idea that the Industrial Revolution started on the farm. And if you look at the themes that are presented in this PowerPoint slide, there are issues dealing with things like population growth. So because people were living longer and there was a decrease in the actual death rate in many different parts of Europe, it actually created an influx of new population. Now, it doesn't mean that they could feed everybody effectively. It's really important you read the small section on the Great Hunger to get a better idea about how Irish population doubled between 4 to 8 million. And anytime there was any food shortage, it was the people who felt the effects immediately. And also the idea of immigration occurs. Obviously, the United States is a country where we are heavily influenced by the immigration of Europeans coming to our country, but also there was movement of Europeans throughout countries in Europe. So what ends up happening is it starts on the farm and then eventually moves to the cities. And you're going to see urban living conditions in the Industrial Revolution where they have to figure out basic needs such as how to take care of sanitation and what to do as towns grow so large that they end up having areas that are suburbs. So you build up houses on top of houses and the cities get bigger and bigger. And also this idea of moral consequences of urban life, which there's a lot of different things about what to do with the poor. Today we have a lot of laws and things about people who are homeless. This all began in the 17 and 1800s during the Industrial Revolution. This is an image of a city during the Industrial Revolution. You can see through the development that at the city center are the industrial towers, and then the sense that it grows out from outside of there. So what were urban living conditions like? Well, because they grew so rapidly, there were some problems with providing proper drainage of water as well as getting fresh water into the cities. If you look on page 624 of the textbook, there's some really good images that we're going to talk about here in a second that sort of elicit this. There's also the new industrial middle class, where you've got people who've moved to the cities and they're involved in the mercantile trades, which is basically trading. How cities start to separate out religious minorities. If you've ever heard of the term a Jewish ghetto, that's where that term comes from, is that people who are Jewish were separated out in the cities. And then you've got public health acts, things like taking care of public health problems like cholera or other diseases that were easily spread. And as this also develops, you also have these urban workers that are both laborers and servants. So there is some new jobs, but they're not paying. So on page 624 are these three different images that show conditions of London's poor. I'd encourage you to read page 624 and make sure you know and understand what each of these shows. They show issues dealing with population density as well as urban. There's many images we can look at describing the conditions of the working poor. Here you've got some city streets, children and men crammed all into poor housing areas. So then you've got the actual conditions that existed in the workshops, so working in the cotton mills, the coal mines, the standard of living that comes from where you work as well as where you're at home. You need to really research and look at the information about the Factory Acts. So two things we've identified is we know the conditions for women and children were some of the poorest. So was there anything they could do to help those standards of living for the women and the children in workforces? Again, there's some really good articles, some side topics on page 628 and 629 that discuss. Here's an image of a woman who would be working in the coal mines. There's images on page 630 with a caption that describe this really well. None of this looks very humane or very desirable, and they're all reflective of that changing standard of living. So there were efforts at change. There were people like Robert Owen who promoted utopian socialism. We talked about the Luddites, who were the ones who intentionally tried to destroy technology because they felt like technology was changing the future, and various acts to try and improve the conditions. But probably the most important thing came the trade unions. And trade unions were skilled workers who formed unions to protect their rights as well as their working conditions. So in total, this is what the end of the chapter looks like. You need to make sure that you've used this PowerPoint to kind of get the main ideas, but include in your Cornell notes some of the annotations and ideas that connect them together.